Then you're,
Okay.
Folks, am I on? Hello? Yeah. Folks, if you'll just bear with us for a few minutes, we're just awaiting our illustrious friend Jan Brown with copies of the bill for the committee members. So we should get started very shortly. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Regulatory Subcommittee of the House Regulatory Regulated Industries, Committee. Thank you so much. I know there had been some talk originally of that this would be a hearing only, but I think we're okay to go. We're okay today to go ahead and take a vote on HB 996. That will be the only bill that we're hearing in this committee today. And at this time, I'd like to go ahead and ask the author of the bill, Chairman Carpenter, to come on up and tell us about the bill. Are you sorry?
Thank you very much. Thank you, committee, for having me here today. We're working off of LC 3650. 95S is substitute. We did some cleanup language off the original bill, tried to simplify it for you really. But basically what this bill does is I was approached by a nutritional therapy practitioner in my district, Whitney Marks, that did a study program and then realized when she got back to Dalton, Georgia, she was not allowed to operate in the state of Georgia without a license from the state. And so further research into the issue, and I realized she was able to do it in other states. So if she wanted to be in Florida, for say, and she wanted to give nutritional advice on TikTok, on Instagram, she could to Georgians and take money. But being a Georgia resident, she could not operate and do what she does. So basically, this is people that give nutritional advice to people to help you eat better meals, help with meal planning, things of that nature. A lot of folks you'll hear from today, you'll hear from the CrossFit folks who do that as well as part of a holistic approach to better health. And really they're operating in violation of Georgia statute without this license piece. So just this would fall under the dietitian's licensing. So just for a little minute to explain, we've got I think around 800 licensed dietitians in the state of Georgia for, I don't know how many million people. How many million people does Georgia have now? 10, 7, 11 million people. So we'll just say 11 million people. So we got 800 people advising 11 million people how to do a better job at eating and not to deal with obesity issues. So when when this first went into practice was in the 80s, this all started going into place in 81. Then it was updated in 84 and updated in 94. What I will tell you is since that time in the 80s, obesity rates in the state of Georgia were in the high teens. And currently, as of 2018, it's 31% of Georgian adults are obese. So clearly we have a need to discuss nutrition in the state of Georgia. And this bill would simply carve out a little bit of people on this so they're able to give advice legally so that Georgians are more healthy. And that's why I got into it. You know, I'm a big fan of allowing people to operate because I think consumers are empowered now more than they ever have been. You didn't have the internet in the 80s when all this was going into place where you really needed those consumer protections. Now, if I go to somebody and I get nutritional advice and I don't lose any weight, first, I don't go back to them. Second, I tell all my friends, and all that happens, you know, organically now that it didn't happen, I think, in the 80s. And so I think the world is changing at a much faster pace than our licensing is. Just for a little more feedback as well, in order to be able to practice be a practicing dietitian in the state of Georgia, you have to have 900 hours of service, a bachelor or higher degree from a major college. You have to pass an exam. And all this is to say, you know, these are really big. These folks are not trying to be dietitians. Okay. All they're trying to do is give you advice and say, look, this is how you should plan your meal. This is what you should be eating to be healthy and lose weight. And I think that's what this carve out does. I'll be glad to take any questions.
Okay.
And the biggest changes of what you're seeing obviously is lines, you know, 47 through 59. But basically the big piece that I see is 53. You'll be able to disseminate literature about nutritional information, uses of food material, dietary supplements, and be able to give them guidance and assessments. They're not prescribing stuff. You know, they're not going to the level of a dietitian. There's definitely a need for dietitians, especially in a hospital type setting, nursing home setting, all that school settings. But this is just people trying to give individuals advice on how to better eat and consume food and exercise and have a better lifestyle.
Right. And Chairman Corbett, I do know from having done a little bit of reading that there clearly is a sort of a distinction between what we would call medical dietitians. In other words, giving nutrition or dietitian advice to solve or to cure medical problems or medical. Do you find that typically what we're talking about here is folks that are just looking to give general good health, you know, for health and fitness, for weight purposes,
Yep.
perhaps lifestyle?
That's right. This is
not particularly to diagnose or to treat or to
there's no
advertise that they're
diagnosing in
treating.
this process. This is just saying, hey, look, if you eat this, you're gonna, you know, if you eat this, if you do this max exercise, you're gonna start making better decisions. You're gonna be healthier, and put you in game plans and really just help coach you up, if you will. Nutrition coach is what I like to call them. But, you know, coach you up and make sure that you're following a good plan to help kind of, you know, make yourself more healthy.
Okay. I think you do have a question here. Representative Smith.
So to get a better understanding of this, so when you go to a personal trainer and they give you nutritional advice, they're operating outside the law?
I would think so. Yes. That's my understanding. That's why we're here today, because I think there are people that are doing it, and they're definitely doing it on the internet. In other states are coming, you know, people from other states are operating in Georgia, giving advice, taking payments outside the state, online. So they're able to actually come in and poach customers from the state of Georgia, because you'd be operating in violation of the law in the state of Georgia. And so there's been a big movement. There was a big movement with the previous presidential administration about kind of cutting out the red tape on all this and allowing these folks to operate. But now there's a movement to go to the state level and fix this stuff.
Okay. Number 17, Chairman Collins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Chairman, no one here asking for this legislation has given you advice. Is that what I'm understanding?
You are correct.
Okay, all right.
I'm thinking maybe if we have any luck with this bill, somebody might say, hey, don't eat that second hot dog, Casey. Please put the hot dog down.
Okay. Any other questions for Chairman Carpenter? Okay, we do have some folks that have signed up to speak to the bill. Let's see, first up, Tony West. Please introduce yourself and tell us who you're with.
Hey, good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Thanks for allowing testimony today. My name is Tony West. I'm the Deputy State Director for Americans for Prosperity, Georgia. Americans for Prosperity is the state's largest grassroots organization focused on long-term solutions to our country's biggest problems. I'm here to support this bill. Americans for Prosperity believes in advancing employment policy that empowers people to earn success, contribute to their communities, and live meaningful lives. The dignity of work, ability to pursue the profession of one's choice, and voluntary association amongst people are key to a free and thriving labor market. Under the current Georgia Dietetics Practice Act, trainers, health coaches, and other wellness practitioners are prohibited from providing substantive and individualized nutrition advice. We think that's wrong. Current law prevents these workers from better serving their current clients and growing their business by serving even more. It also hinders consumers who may have a positive relationship with a current trainer or coach and can't receive more personalized attention because of this outdated law. Georgia's in the minority of states that still has laws like these, and it doesn't serve to protect Georgia consumers as they can have access to any of this type of advice online from out-of-state providers. It's only currently hindering Georgia residents who are trying to succeed in their chosen career. For these reasons, I encourage you to cut red tape, empower individuals to pursue their desired careers, and vote in favor of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone have any questions for Mr. West? Anyone on the committee? No. Thank you, Mr. West. Next up, Jet Tony.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Jet Tony, representing the Georgia Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. Those are the individuals, over 2,000 licensed dietitians in the state who provide medical nutrition therapy, working through the medical providers and facilities throughout the state. This is a new client for our firm. We were engaged by GAND in December, and really a little surprised at this bill. So it's taken me a little while to get up to speed on the real effect of what this bill does. So what GAND has done is provide to bring some folks who I'm thankful they were willing to be able to change their schedules to come and talk to you. These are all licensed dietitians who are in the academy. They're serving clients throughout the state now. One is a member of the licensure board, though she cannot speak on behalf of the board. She's here speaking as a licensed dietitian. As is the case with many pieces of legislation, the intent is extremely well-meaning, while the impact of the legislation goes much further. And in fact, there's reason to believe that the most aggressive impact of this legislation would be to create a great deal of confusion in the marketplace about the services being provided. Now, you will hear the presenters from GAND say that the individuals who have brought this bill and others who are saying they support it can actually do all the things that they want to do without this legislation. So this legislation may not be necessary. So I'll look forward to hearing the testimony of my clients on this. But I encourage the committee to hold this, at least for one more meeting, and let's all get better educated about the impact of it. Yes, it's wonderful to cut government red tape, but the legislature has a duty to maintain standards and to maintain the distinction of titles and the scope of practice in the marketplace so that your constituents can know what they're getting when they receive the work of nutritionists and dietitians and others in the wellness area. So we would look forward to having a further conversation with Representative Carpenter and any of the other groups that are supporting the legislation. But again, I'm asking you to go slow. We can wait one more meeting to have a further conversation on it. So I would like to ask our next presenter to come.
Willing to entertain any questions? Do we have any questions, committee? No? Okay, feel free to go ahead and introduce your next speaker.
Robin Stiegel is the Public Policy Chair of the Georgia Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. And she will be speaking to, she'll introduce you to the licensed community, and then she will speak to this notion that folks cannot do what they want to do unless this bill passes.
Hi, good afternoon. I want to thank you for the opportunity to present today. My name is Robin Stiegel, and I'm a registered dietitian. I've actually been in private practice since 2008, and I graduated from my program in 2006, and initially thought that I'd go out into the world and merge a couple of past interests of mine in business and nutrition and work on the business side of things. But I got to working in that field for a while, and I realized I wasn't making the kind of impact for folks that was meaningful to me, meaning I wasn't able to touch people's lives and help them get healthy and better in that role. And that's why I decided to go in private practice. So I've been doing that. It has been the joy of my life. It is work that I am super passionate about. I also have the opportunity to help volunteer for the Georgia Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics on the public policy chair. And this is my first year in that role, and I've never testified before, so forgive me, a little bit nervous. So the opportunity to speak on this bill is wonderful, because I think what we have is a moment to really provide some clarification around what the scope and extent of the Georgia Dietetics Act is and what it will allow and what it prohibits. So in other states in the nation, the Dietetics Acts that are on the books are so restrictive about two concepts. One is this medical level of nutrition therapy. The other one is another level down, which is around wellness and health, and that's nutrition counseling. In my own practice, I do a great deal of nutrition counseling every single day, and that is a very different service than medical nutrition therapy. In these other states that are very restrictive, they set the bar that all nutrition counseling and medical nutrition therapy must be provided by a licensed dietitian. In the state of Georgia, that is not our standard. The Dietetics Practice Act on the books that has not been changed, the reason it hasn't been changed in so long is that it was written with a level of breadth and a level of flexibility to provide personal trainers, health coaches, wellness experts to do all of these nutrition counseling things that we're talking about today. How do I know that? I work with health coaches, personal trainers, CrossFit instructors all the time. We refer clients back and forth. In the scope of the Dietetics Practice Act, none of them are providing medical nutrition therapy. That is the standard that the Dietetics Practice Act expressly states should be provided by a dietitian. I went through the bill, the amended language, and I compared it with the current statutes. And I'm happy to share this with anyone on the committee. And what it struck me was that on the surface, like when I read a summary about the bill, that it was going to allow more folks to get in and help Georgians with absolutely all these issues that we were just hearing about, obesity, and, like in this middle of this COVID pandemic, keeping ourselves as healthy and well as we possibly can, what my trainer can do to help me get leaned out or shredded, whatever. All of those things, we want more people to be able to provide those services, given that they're good at what they do and well-trained and passionate and committed in keeping their client safety in mind. All of those things are permitted in the Dietetics Practice Act. But with the new language introduced, what it actually does is it introduces a tightening and an additional level of restriction that would require credentialing as opposed to the language of the current bill, which does not have the standard of a credentialed nutrition counseling provision. In my experience working with, like I said, personal trainers, that additional burden of having to go out and get credentialed to be able to provide services that they can already provide, given the scope of the Dietetics Practice Act, feels a little bit opposite to what the intent of what, we've all been talking about here today. What we want to do is absolutely right. We want to lower the burden on qualified, intelligent, well-read nutrition, coaches and folks that have varying levels of training and interest in this field. And actually, as dietitians, we welcome and support those folks in these efforts in the world of nutrition counseling. The standard that we provide, because of all those hours, that was sort of brought out. Yes, we have had a lot of training, and it's actually 1,200 hours of supervised practice. The standard is now a master's degree. We have to pass a national credentialing examination, and we have to complete continuing education that is reported back to our credentialing board. That standard is really, really high. And the reason for that is because the services that we provide, medical nutrition therapy, has a high risk of harm should it be provided by someone with less training. Nutrition counseling is not that standard, and that is not the standard that is expressly prohibited in the Dietetics Practice Act. So our bill allows for health coaches and trainers and people to go to the grocery store and set up healthy pantries and make meal plans to address healthy eating and wellness and prevention. All of that is permitted. Our feeling is a little bit like the intent, which we support, is not going to be met with the current language and wording of this bill in this amendment. And that gives us some concern, because I think we're all on the same page in terms of, yes, we want to get more folks healthy in this state, but we're not going to get there, and it's not going to actually make it easier for folks. And it's not going to make it clearer about, what do you mean by dietary products? Some of the language is ambiguous and confusing. And that's why I feel like we need definitely to get more information and clarification and make sure that what we put in here is actually going to achieve the objective. And I feel like that's something that we want to make sure, is the end result for any sort of amendment or change to the Dietetic Practice Act. So, I want to thank you too, Chairman Earhart, for taking our information late last night. We had kind of gotten the heads up about this pretty late in the afternoon, so we had to get some language together. And so if you have any questions about the information that I provided, I'm happy to answer those. And I just want to thank you again for the opportunity to be here and testify.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Is it Stegall? Stegall?
Stegall. It's
Stegall.
fine.
Anyone have any questions?
I have a question.
Just one second.
I want to know the specific language that allows personal trainers and other health coaches to be able to give nutritional advice based on our current language.
So, and I don't have the copy of the bill, so that, or I'm sorry, excuse me, the code. I don't have the amended language in front of you that you're looking at. I have a copy that I pulled most recently from online. So the statutes that we're looking at are going to be the provisions. It looks like it starts with line number 40. Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you. So specifically what we have in the current act is this heading. Nothing in this chapter shall be construed to affect or prevent. And then it lists the things that we shall not prevent or construe. And as we go through it, it talks first about a student enrolled in a dietetic program supervised by a dietitian. If we go all the way down to number 8, so this is on page 2, line 40. The language in the current act says nothing in this chapter shall be construed to affect or prevent persons from marketing or distributing food, disseminating information on food, food materials, dietary or food supplements, or minerals and herbs, including but not limited to operators and employees of health food stores or other licensed businesses which sell products that provide that such persons shall not engage in oral or written explanation. And so it goes on to state, all of this is permitted. The language that we have now is that would be struck in this amendment. The free dissemination, I have to get,
Excuse me, what page are you on?
so this is page 3.
Page 3.
Yeah.
In line, what line?
So what we start to see is the amendment begins to change the language on page 2, line 40. I think for me, because just the way my brain works, it's actually easier for me to pull it up and do a side-by-side comparison of the old language and the new language. But what we see is that the bill as it is currently written does not prohibit or limit anything that is in the realm of nutrition counseling. The language that is being introduced does in fact add a higher level of, so if we go to page 3.
From what I see in this, excuse me, Madam Chair. It's saying that perhaps maybe these people, health coaches or personal trainers, are allowed to give nutrition advice under the direction of a dietitian.
That is not the, and I would be happy to, be able to spend some time and go through it. But to clarify, the way the current bill is worded, or excuse me, the current Dietetic Practice Act is worded, it is written broadly enough that there is no limitation, no requirement for licensure for anyone providing nutrition counseling. The act is written specifically to address that higher level of care, that higher standard of care, which is medical nutrition therapy. The language is changed and slightly different from the version I was working off last night. But what we will see is that the bill as it currently stands does not have any restriction on nutrition counseling. And the only restriction and the wording that is explicit is that for practicing dietetics or medical nutrition therapy.
And that's sprinkled throughout.
I will say in her sense, the language changed quite dramatically from what you have a copy of. I will say. In that
So
case.
I guess maybe in that sense, it would help for us to be able to have some more time to dive into it, because I think honestly, what we're really trying to achieve is language in a bill that is going to get to this objective, which is how do we allow folks to get, great, well qualified information around nutrition, and still prevent the risk of harm to the consumer. And that's why we just want to ask for a little bit more time so that we can have the opportunity to look at this new language and, really help make sure that we're all going to end up at the place that we want to be.
Right. Thank you. And would you be willing to yield for a question?
Absolutely.
Okay. Number 15.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Deagle, appreciate your presentation. I was going through this bill myself, and your presentation prompted 2 questions. In full transparency, I have a nephew that's over at Georgia State University in sports medicine. That's what he wants to get as his degree. And I discovered that there's a difference between qualified and specialized in the world of sports medicine. Can you share with this body, you can be qualified, but you have to be also specialized, because different athletes in different sports, because of our body, the ecosystem of our body, your recommendations to that client will be different. And so it's one thing to be qualified, degreed, things of that nature, but to be specialized. And I don't see that language in this bill as it in its current form. Can you talk to that?
Well, I wish I could speak to sports nutrition and at that level of detail. I can speak generally about the different levels of, there are different standards of both training and experience and specialization that enable providers to treat certain specific conditions or make certain very, very specific guidelines and recommendations. What we aim to do is to make sure that where the risk of harm is the lowest, we are making people's access to generalized information about health and wellness and prevention, guidelines around healthy eating, guidelines around, getting fit, those kinds of things. That is something that is easily accessible and easily provided by more people that have gone through the training. I'm happy to get more information specific to, and I know I'm not addressing your question directly, about the difference between specialization and qualification. And I will just say that it makes sense that as the complexity and the needs of the client that you're working with increases, that they're working with someone that has the training and the specialization and the skills to manage that client appropriately. And that's really, at the end of the day, what we're all about and what we're really trying to support. And one of the things that I'm hoping to do is make sure that we are able to craft language that is clear, that we don't have this ambiguity or questioning when we start to open this thing up and insert language into it, because it does then begin to create a lot of questions. And, well, what's specialization and what's training and what certification, what does that mean? And, all of those things. So that's why I'm asking that we really provide, some thoughtful examination before we maybe end up with a bill that doesn't actually achieve what, we were hoping to in the first place.
Madam Chair, my follow-up, if I may. I appreciate that. My second question is around liability. In the world of sports, having children that play in volleyball and football, there's a certain level of liability for that coach or that trainer. And then the Georgia High School Association is one thing, but then when I think about college, it's something
Yes.
completely different. Would you, from your subject matter expertise, would you recommend that we should have some language in here to address liability and what that should look like if a trainer is dealing with a child that's a minor under the age of 18 who possibly, want that cutting edge in that sport of choice versus an adult who may be at LA Fitness? And would you recommend that we should have some liability language in our bill? Because I know you mentioned how broad this bill is several times, but one of the things that's alarming to me as a parent with several athletes and children, I don't see no liability piece. Could you speak to that as well?
I can certainly say that I'm in agreement that we want to make sure that what we end up with in terms of legislation is going to achieve a couple of things. One, are we actually improving access and making sure that the right provider is in front of the client, and making sure that at the end of the day, everyone is safe and is working with a person that is going to address their specific needs. So I certainly could agree that there should be, we would strongly encourage that there is some tightening up and clarification of the language so that we are addressing any potential risk of harm and that we're really, much more clear on that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And we are quickly running out of time. We do have 2 more people signed up to speak. I do notice though that they are, you are all from the same organization, the Georgia Academy of Nutrition and Dietitians. So I just didn't know, we have an Ashley Matthews and a Cicely Thomas. Are they both present?
They are. Madam Chair, if I might, a couple of clarifications.
Please introduce yourself.
Okay, Jet Tony.
Yeah.
For the
Oh,
Georgia
Jeff, sorry.
Academy
I
of
put my glasses
Nutrition.
back on and I didn't see
Okay.
you.
I've just thought that the radiance from my forehead would have identified me. The Jet Tony with Gand. The Gand is not opposed to the legislation. As I said, that this legislation isn't going to affect licensed dietitians. But what Gand people, as they looked at this bill more deeply, And we'll need to look more deeply at substitute. Thank you for what you said about the substitute being different. We'll need to look at this more carefully because our folks do not think that the bill does what is intended by the author. So we're not here to oppose the bill. We just think that it's going to have the actual opposite effect than what is intended. As Ms. Stegall, I said it wrong. That's a bad thing to do with a new client, is pronounce the name wrong. As she said, the GAN wants consumers in the state of Georgia to have all the nutritional counseling that can be made available to them. But this bill, in fact, may actually be ratcheting down on who can provide it. And that's why we asked for a week or 2 days even. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. And Chairman Carpenter, do you have anything you'd like to add at this point? I know a couple of comments were made, and I will tell you, one thing I did hear earlier is that, and I've heard this argument before as relates to licensing and opening up different avenues for Georgians to receive, whether it's medical care or everything from the dietitians to the cosmetologists. And oftentimes the argument is made that we don't want to confuse consumers, with those that are licensed and those that are off. And I have, on the contrary, I've often found that argument to be maybe an unintended, barrier to actually opening up new avenues for Georgians to receive these types of services. Do you have anything you'd like to weigh in on what we're hearing? Is this all currently allowable in law?
Yeah, so I don't think so. I think this is, I think she didn't have the new substitute. And so when she did her research on it, she didn't have the new substitute. And I think that's what this new substitute does, right? Is it clarifies, because she talked about wanting to make sure it was clear, and we were actually going to make it harder. But I think what you see in lines 53 through 59, the free dissemination of literature by any persons from furnishing nutritional information as to the use of food materials or dietary supplements, providing food and nutritional guidance, assessments, behavioral change management, coaching, education, encouragement, evaluation, recommendations, so long as these people do not claim to be dietitians. And so what I think that does is that clarifies. I think maybe you could interpret the code as saying, I think I can operate, but I think the people that I'm representing are saying they don't feel comfortable operating under the current statute and current licensing process. And so what this does is it clarifies that to allow what she called nutritional counseling to make sure that these people felt comfortable operating, because these people are rule followers. I would have just operated and dealt with it, right, and begged for forgiveness. But these people, they want to make sure they're following the letter of the law and make sure what they're doing is legal. And they've got people telling them that they went to school with that's probably not lawful in the state of Georgia. And so what this substitute does is it clarifies exactly what they can do, so long as they don't claim to be a dietitian. And so that protects the medical level dietitian that Ms. Stegall was referring to, and making sure that is not affected in this. And it clarifies that nutritional counseling to make sure that they are safe.
Thank you for clarifying. Okay. Do we have anyone else needing to speak?
And I may need to get Ms. Stegall's number when this is over so I can lose some weight, because I've got some serious childhood obesity issues here.
Okay, well, if there are no further questions, at this time, I will entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, motion to pass.
Do I hear a second? Thank you. All those in favor of the passage of House Bill 996, say aye. Those opposed? No? Okay, I believe the ayes have it. Thank you so much, Chairman Carpenter.
Thank you. I appreciate
Thank
you,
you.
committee.
And thank you for those who came today to testify. Meeting adjourned.